Thank you. Please be seated. All right, so we are back on the record. Sir, you remain under oath.
Yes.
And thank you, Mr. Bill.
Thank you very much, John.
You're welcome.
Good morning, Mr. Sussman.
Good morning. Good, thank you.
Thank you for traveling here. You came from California.
I did.
Correct. And you came in yesterday?
Yes. There's no direct, easy way to get here either.
No? Not
No.
to, no? You make one or two stops along the way?
One.
Okay. You've testified before. How many times on gunshots did you say? Maybe 3?
Maybe 6.
6, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. And you've been cross-examined before, right?
I have.
Okay, so you understand the process?
Of course.
Okay. And you'll do your best to answer the questions that I ask, is that correct?
I certainly will.
Okay. If you have any problems with any of the questions, or if you don't understand, simply tell me, okay?
I certainly will.
And I'll rephrase it. You understand that?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Mr. Stutzman, you made a report in the case that we've seen up here on the screen. And I believe in your report, on the last page of your report, you finished with reserving the right to amend the report,
Yes, correct.
including my findings and opinions at some later time based upon my review and additional records and/or items of evidence I might subsequently receive.
Right, correct.
Okay. So you can change or fix your opinions or anything that you need to in the report, correct?
Well, if there was something that came to my attention that had an impact on my opinion, certainly.
Sure. So you would have, and when did this report get written, sir?
This was written in October 13, 2014.
Okay, so October, and we're here in at the end of April.
Yes, correct. Close.
And on direct, you testified to a number of things. I'd like to just make sure that we're on the same page on some of those things.
Absolutely.
Right? Those 15 of 18 sounds in the second barrage, as Dr. Marr calls it,
Yes.
are all coming from one gun, one location in the same direction, correct?
I would agree with that.
And is that phrase, is that something that's used in your field, weapon, location, and direction?
Yes.
Because if you change the direction or if you change the location, the sound would be different, correct?
Yes. If you change it significantly, an inch or two or even a foot or two is not going to make a difference. But if you change it significantly, yes, it would.
Sure.
Especially the direction.
Sure, the direction of it could change,
Yes.
correct? Okay, and I believe we heard some testimony from Dr. Marr about that. He's been published in State's Exhibit 1059. Did you get all of the expert reports?
Yes, I did.
And their CVs as well?
Yes.
And any publications that they
Right.
had?
And I know Dr. Marr.
Okay, you know.
We've lectured together.
Okay. And he's published, correct?
Yes, correct.
Quite widely, right? You agree?
Yes, correct.
Okay, and Bruce Koenig, too, you know him?
Yes.
Okay, and he's published quite widely as well.
Yes.
Is that right? Each of them having dozens of publications that have been peer-reviewed, correct?
Many of them.
Yeah. Would you agree with dozens or many of them? I'm not sure of your answer there. Many of those publications are peer-reviewed?
And I don't know how many they have, so I don't know if it's dozens or what.
But you agree multiple, correct?
Correct.
And quite extensively, correct?
Yes.
In fact, you saw their CVs.
Yes.
You don't have any objections with the things that they've put in their CVs, do you?
I don't know that I would.
I'm just asking. There's nothing that came to your attention or to your light about Dr. Marr or Bruce Koenig, correct? That was wrong in their CVs, correct?
Correct.
So you're mentioned in direct testimony that you had created a paper. Did you write a paper or prepare a paper?
Prepare a paper, correct.
Is that paper prepared for publication?
It was presented at the Audio Engineering Society, their conference.
Okay, so it's at a conference, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and you've had other presentations that you've testified about?
Correct.
Okay. Are you published?
I have prepared some papers that have been presented and provided to organizations.
Okay. I'm talking about whether or not you're published, which is a common term in articles or books or chapters of books.
No.
Okay. How about the review of Dr. Marr's directionality paper? Have you seen that, the one that was provided in discovery and to you? The one about how your change of your direction on a gun could actually change the audio signal that you can hear.
Right, I believe I was actually present when he presented that paper at a forensic conference of the Audio Engineering Society.
In London?
Was it London or Denver?
Were you at both?
No, I was in Denver, but I wasn't in London.
You weren't in London. No.
Correct.
But he presented it in Denver as well?
Don't lock me in because
I won't.
I don't remember specific, but it sounds very familiar with a paper that he presented in Denver.
Okay. And that would have been recently then?
That would have been, no, it would have been 3 years ago.
Okay. So, in looking at your report, we'll get there in a second. Okay. This is Dr. Marr's report, the state's exhibit. You did see this, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And from reading the reports, your understanding that Dr. Marr was the first person to review the tape or the
recording. Yes.
And he did, correct?
Yes, correct.
And then everybody else looked at it too.
Correct.
In a kind of in a peer review fashion. Would you agree?
I think that would be appropriate.
Okay. People could criticize it if they wish to, or add to it, or.
Correct.
And then you're familiar with the fact that they each then were provided a recording, the different experts, correct?
Yes, I am.
And besides Dr. Marr and Bruce Koenig and his partner Doug Lacey, read their report.
Right.
Besides them, did you also read reports of Jack Freitag as well as Dr. Durant-Bagalt?
Yes.
Okay. And a Mr. Beck. Correct?
Yes.
I think you called him Dr. Beck before on direct.
I may have.
Mr. Stephen Beck. Okay. Since your report, sir, have you made any additions or changes to it, or corrected any of those typos or punctuations?
Yes. I have corrected on page 3 the typos and times.
Was that provided?
Pardon?
Was that provided to the state? Did you provide that to the defense counsel?
Oh, I did.
Okay, and when would that have been?
Just last night.
Last night?
Yes.
Okay. So, do you have a copy of that corrected report?
Yes, I do. But
Would you mind sharing
Sure.
it with the opponent?
Sure.
Thank you.
I will.
Is that it, sir?
Yes, that's it. Right here.
Sorry, turn like that.
Sure.
So, during that period of time between October and now, you've reviewed the report and you made some of the changes. There was a quibble about a few punctuation and grammatical changes as well.
I didn't deal with those. I just it had to be material for me to do anything about it.
Right. Okay. All right. Go to page 1. And the changes that you looked at, would it be correct for me to say that when you reviewed your report, you had reviewed the reports, the supplemental reports and letters from Koenig, Beck, Marr, Bagalt, of your report, correct?
It was actually not as a result of reviewing any of theirs, but as a result of reviewing all of my material that went into my analysis in preparation for testimony that I found out myself. Then subsequently I reviewed, I believe it was Bruce Koenig's report where he pointed out some things, but I had already caught them.
Okay. You caught them, and that would have been recently? Within the past week here?
Sure.
Okay. In preparation for now?
Correct.
And when you first got Mr. Koenig's report, though, that laid out all of the different grammatical as well as punctuation as well as timing errors in your report, did you make mental note of them?
I made mental note, but when I received those reports, I went through them for the content, and it wasn't until after going over my reports and my exhibits and then going through theirs in more detail that I digested what Bruce Koenig had said.
Okay, so further digested, further reviewed it, looked at it.
Correct.
Okay. So you wouldn't, the errors that he found and the errors that he wrote up, you wouldn't disagree with those errors?
Well, no, I'm not going to agree with what you just said, because one of the charts, and I don't have his report in front of me, was dealing with milliseconds. And where you put the cursor, you've got very little tolerance and it changes the milliseconds. So, in my opinion, that was gagging on gnats, his chart with the millisecond difference.
Okay. Maybe being too picky, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Well, what are the main ones that here on direct examination, again, that you pointed out were mistakes that you had?
There you go.
So this number here,
right, correct.
This is your official report, correct?
Yes.
And this is not supposed to be...
That should be 941. Oh, I'm sorry. That should be 953,453.
Okay. Well, that's not a nap, correct? That's a significant...
Yeah, and I don't know how that happened because you refer further down in my report and it's correct.
Have it later in a report. But
yes.
As far as the description chart or the,
right.
What draws people's eyes right above your, is this the spectra?
You're seeing the waveform right there,
waveform,
and
right.
Then below it the
And
spectrograph.
Okay. All right, and then there was another one too?
There was one of the exhibits.
Which is attached, right?
Pardon?
Which is attached?
Yes, correct.
Recall where the other mistake was.
Just a moment. Yes, it was Exhibit 3. And the duration time should be 10 seconds, 165 milliseconds.
Am I pointing to the right spot where you put the red circle on?
Yes, that's correct.
So that's supposed to be 10 point what?
That's supposed to be 10.165.
Okay. And that only came to your attention when?
When I was preparing for testimony this week and looked at the starting point of that exhibit.
Yeah.
And then when you look at the exhibit before, that has the correct starting point. Okay. That is Exhibit 2, and it's 941,621.
Okay. And when would that have been about then?
When would that
You
have
said
been?
this week, when you were preparing this week.
Thursday or Friday.
Okay. Prior to the weekend, right? Okay.
Yes.
Right.
Yes,
now,
correct.
On your opinions and conclusions,
yes.
They're all to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And I believe on direct you testified that it is your opinion that those 15 of 18 shots are all from the same gun, location, direction, correct?
Correct.
Okay. you didn't bullet point that one out specifically. Could we agree it was probably could be argued that it's here in the second bullet point here?
Yeah.
As you do mention 15 gunshots,
Right.
Series 2.
Right.
Right? But it's not listed out as a specific finding, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Was it your... you were contacted again by who?
By Dr. Ron Martinelli.
Martinelli?
Yes, he's a criminalist working on the case.
Right. And he's got a group or a team, is that correct?
That's correct.
Have you worked with them before?
I have worked with him a few times before, correct?
Okay. How many would be a few? How many times?
Maybe 4 or 5.
4 or 5 times.
Mostly on video.
Okay. So if he has a video or an audio issue, you would possibly be somebody that you might contact.
That's correct.
Were all the others video? Is this the first audio?
Some of the others were video and audio.
And audio.
Right.
But audio specifically the first time?
Correct.
Okay.
Well, I can't say that. I don't have a perfect memory, but I've worked on several cases, and if they had audio, which at least one of them did, it would have been audio from video.
Okay.
As this case is.
A few or a several is 4 to 5, correct?
That's the best of my recollection.
Okay.
And I can only tell you the best of my recollection.
That's why I'm asking these questions.
Thank you.
Because they're important. You're in a scientific field,
Sure.
right? And you use the word a few, a paragraph or two
Right.
ago, and then
Right.
then several. So I just want to make sure that it's correct. You understand?
Right.
Okay. So 4 or 5, to the best of your recollection. A few,
Correct.
several, it means the same. So reasonable degree of scientific certainty, and we can agree that the 15 of 18 are the same. And then you looked at what you call the middle shot, right?
I did.
And that Dr. Marr, he had that in his report as the last shot of the first barrage, correct?
I believe that he referred to it as the quieter shot between the first and second barrage.
Okay, more accurate. He has it listed in his report, correct?
Yes, it is in his report.
Okay.
Kind of honorable mention.
Okay. You say he's honorably mentioned?
No, I say he kind of gave that shot between the two honorable mention.
Right. Because I'm not sure of your words or your characterization of it.
Well, I don't think that he had given much attention to analyzing that shot, that middle shot,
At that
at the time he wrote his first report.
Okay. And you understand that the question for him was about the second barrage?
Oh, I do. Yes, of course.
Okay. All right. And then you looked at not only the second barrage, but why did you look at the honorable mention shot before that?
Because it was there.
Yeah. And who, anybody ask you to do that, or is that something you took on your own?
No, that was something I wanted to do as thorough analysis as I could, and that was something that needed to be looked at.
Okay. And how about that first barrage, the first series of shots? Did you look at that as well?
Yes.
Okay. And can we agree that those 15 of 18 shots, other than that middle shot or last shot, that they don't match up to any in the first series, correct?
I did not try to match anything in the first series. It was just such a Armageddon that other than identifying each gunshot as close as I could, I didn't analyze those gunshots.
But it is there, right? I mean, they're there.
Oh, of course they're there, yes.
And some of them don't overlap, correct?
Right, yes.
At the end, towards the end. But you didn't look at those, just that honorable mention last shot, correct?
Well, I did look at those. You see, my exhibit number 1 has them even numbered and identified.
Let me be more exact.
Yes.
Did you look at any of those to determine whether or not they matched up to the 15 of 18?
No.
Okay. Is that something that you could have done?
I don't know because I didn't do it, so I'm not able to comment whether it could have been done or whether it was, I didn't believe that it was it was the germane to the analysis of the second barrage. That was obviously the intention.
So as far as you know, to your mind, you're not controverting any testimony or any opinion that that first series of shots does not match the second series of shots.
I'm not in a position to comment since I didn't do that analysis.
Okay, just want to know the limits, the parameters there of your analysis and of your testimony.
Certainly.
Okay. So the middle shot, we'll go with your word here, that also we're of the understanding now in your testimony that matches with the other shots, correct?
The 15?
The 15,
yes.
Correct? Okay. And I think on direct testimony, you said that when you first reviewed it and looked at it, that you saw a strong similarity.
Correct.
Okay, you recall those words that you
Yes,
used on
yes.
direct? Okay. Is that anywhere in your opinion, sir? Strong similarity?
I don't know that I use those words.
But it is your opinion, correct?
It is, yes.
Okay, and I see, for the record, you're reviewing your report. Take your time to see if
I was
it's in.
looking for my wording on that.
Yeah, please, take your time.
Yes.
I'm sorry?
I'm done reviewing it.
Yes, and I think the question was, did you use those words in your report?
No, I did not.
Okay. But it is your opinion.
It is my opinion, correct.
Did you express that opinion prior to your October report to Mr. Martinelli or anyone on the defense?
Well, you're really testing my memory here about conversations, back that far. I don't know what words I used when I expressed my opinion to anyone before the report.
Okay. Well, let's break that down a little bit.
Sure.
Who did you speak to about this shot, this middle shot?
I believe, if my recollection serves me correctly, Pat D'Angelo and Ron Martinelli.
Okay. And not that it matters too much, but you know who you spoke to first?
I do not.
Okay. And again, just trying to determine your ability on the recollection and the limits of what questions I might be able to ask. So during that period of time, would you say it was earlier on? Was it before your report?
I do not recall.
Well, you don't know if it was before you wrote the report or after?
Correct.
But it could have been anywhere up to your preparation last Thursday.
Oh, it was before that. It was before that. It would have been in the neighborhood of when I wrote the report.
Okay. And that's something, again, that you were the first one to recognize that might be germane, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And why is that? Why would that middle shot be germane back then when you were looking at it?
Well, in reviewing material that came to me from other experts, it was indicated that there was a 4.2 second gap between the first barrage and the second barrage that was of interest to have analyzed in the second barrage. And so the fact that at 1.7 seconds after the last shot in the first barrage and 2.6 seconds before the first shot in the second was this middle shot.
Correct. And you're reviewing that, and you remember what report that you got that from?
It was Dr. Mars.
Okay. And this Dr. Marr, who also, as you said, he mentioned that report, that shot, correct?
He did mention in his report, correct.
And then he actually laid it out. Do you remember the spectrograph?
Yes.
Spectrogram, I should say.
Spectrogram, yes.
Right. And in there he actually had an arrow pointing to it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So You reviewed it, and what were your thoughts about that middle shot? Why was it germane, is my question.
Well, because if it was there, first of all, that was why it was germane. And as I analyzed it and saw the similarities between that and the first shot of the last series, and there were similarities both orally and spectrographically. That was significant because that meant there really wasn't a 4.2 second gap between the first end of the first series and the first shot of the second series. There was a 1.7 second duration and then a 2.6 second duration from the middle shot to the first shot of the last series.
Okay, so what are the possibilities then as you're thinking about it? What does that middle shot mean?
Well, that middle shot to me indicated that it wasn't a break of 4.2 seconds and then starting up again, that it was suggested to me that it was a continuous shooting.
Okay.
Excuse me.
And a continuous shooting, and
Right.
somebody shot that.
Right.
We all agree it's a gunshot, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So probably came to your mind that that's who that person was might be of interest, correct?
Correct. That shot is of interest because it's consistent with the last 15 that are everybody agrees are similar and from the same weapon.
And how much of the documents, how much of the case have you reviewed? Did you review statements?
I reviewed some statements. I reviewed pictures. I reviewed a number of items early on just to familiarize myself and try to get a better understanding of the scene of the incident.
Okay. Was it of interest to know who might have been able to have shot 15 times?
I'm sorry, what?
Was it of interest to you in reading that material to know who might have shot 15 times?
It would have been of interest, but there was so much material to go over that with my workload and my time schedule, I just did not have the hours and hours and hours and hours it would have taken to try to reconstruct and digest all the interviews, and that was the work of other experts.
Okay.
So I focused on the audio.
The audio.
Right.
I believe you put in 47 hours, is that correct?
Probably.
Okay. And I think was your initial bill 11,000?
No, I think it was 8,000 something.
How much altogether so far?
I hadn't done anything since the last. I've only submitted one billing.
Just that first billing of 8,000 or so?
Correct.
Anything more beyond that?
Well, there was preparation and coming out here and testifying, so there will be an additional bill. I don't know what it is.
But just for last Thursday's work and for this week. Anything else between October and up to that point?
Up until getting ready to go for this trial, no.
Okay. So you have the thought while you're reviewing that middle shot that it might be important, it might be germane to the case, maybe to the facts. Is that correct?
To the case, yes, certainly.
How about the shots themselves? Do you know how many? You testified that you know something about firearms, correct?
Correct.
And Glock 17s, you know how many
Yes.
are in a Glock 17?
I believe it holds 16 round clip.
So 17 holds 16.
I believe so.
Okay. And what about was that something that might have been important to you as you were reviewing this? Did that cross your mind that the 15 is consistent with a gun that might hold 15?
Yeah, the question did come into my mind, and so I believe that I inquired two other experts, Dr. Martinelli and Lance Martini, who had done other aspects of this.
So you spoke to them, right?
Well, I think I spoke with Ron Martinelli and he spoke with Lance Martini.
And then got back to you.
Correct.
All right. In this group, is it Martinelli's group?
Yes, I believe it's him that's put it together.
Okay. And was he your contact then, for the most part?
Yes, he was. Well, he and Pat D'Angelo.
Okay. But you didn't speak directly to Martini. If you needed to know something, he'd be the person that would go and speak to Mr. Martini.
Yes, correct. He was the coordinator of the experts, so I would go through him.
Okay. How did you become first involved with this, with that coordinator?
With Ron Martinelli? Several years ago at the American College of Forensic Examiners training conference in Florida, I put on a workshop, and he came to that workshop.
Okay. Are you a team member then?
A team member. I do work with his team when I'm asked or retained to do so, but I'm not on his website, and I'm not an official team member.
Okay. So what do you have to be an official team member?
Well, I don't know. I don't know that I've explored that or have the answer to that question, but when he hires me, I do the work.
Okay, good. On your first page there of your opinion, of your report,
Yes.
it was brought into this by Martinelli and Associates as member, or is it as a member, or?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm not saying you're a member, I just want to know.
Oh, right.
To read the sentences, it's supposed to say.
As a member of the death investigation team.
For
this case, correct.
Right,
Yes, you are correct.
Okay. So when you're working with them on this case, you would go through Martinelli. Now, were there ever any conference calls?
If there were, I don't recall if there were.
Okay. And that middle shot, as you call it, you compared it to the next one.
Correct.
Do you do cross-correlational analysis?
I did cross-correlation with regards to the peak amplitude statistics.
Because peak amplitude statistics are part of cross-correlational.
They are a method of cross-correlation, correct.
A tool to be used in cross-correlational analysis. But you didn't do the full cross-correlational analysis of everything.
I did, yes, I did the peak amplitude. Correct, I did the peak amplitude.
The peak amplitude, but not the full cross-correlational.
Correct.
Okay. Did you look at the one right before?
The gunshot?
Yeah.
In the last of the first series?
Yeah. Before what we'll talk of as the middle shot.
Yes.
Okay. Did you do that?
I don't recall if I did. I don't recall that I did.
Okay. Would it be in your notes?
No.
Do you have notes?
No.
Didn't take any notes or write or jot anything down?
I believe that my notes are in the forms of screen prints that have been turned into the exhibits.
If we look at a screen, might that help you recollect whether or not you did take a look at that? On any of these exhibits here, how about Exhibit 1 or what about Exhibit 2 here?
Exhibit 2.
Okay, would that have that middle shot?
It does have the middle shot, and as I'm looking at it here, it's dissimilar.
To the one right before?
No, it's similar to the one right before.
It's similar to the one before?
Correct. Which one are you talking about? I'm talking about the last two in the first series. Is that what you're talking about too?
Let's talk about...
I want to make sure I'm answering the question you're asking.
Well, I was asking about the middle shot, right?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I was asking whether or not the shot right before, if you had looked at that.
Oh, and as I'm looking at this, obviously I looked at all the shots in order to identify them and to number them. But I'm looking at both the spectrograph and the waveform.
I don't want to... I'm not asking about right now, sir.
Okay.
Hold on. Go ahead.
They're dissimilar.
Okay. So my question for you is, did you look at... Am I pointing to the middle shot here, sir?
Yes, you are.
Okay. And I had asked you if you had looked at this, and you said that you don't recall. That is the shot right before. Am I pointing to the right spot?
That's correct. If you're asking, did I compare the middle shot with the last one, the first series, I do not recall having done so.
Okay. And you did, though, look at it as compared to this shot, the other 15 of the 18?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. All right. Have you been trained in cross-correlational analysis?
In some aspects, as it pertains to using the spectrograph to analyze it, the waveform, and the peak amplitude statistics.
And is peak amplitude statistics, it's not as widely accepted as the other methodologies?
I have not known it to not be accepted.
But what do most audio forensic experts review? The waveform and the spectrographic analysis, correct?
Correct.
And not everybody looks at peak statistics analysis, correct?
When it's applicable, I don't know. I don't know how to answer your question with everybody.
Did you ever learn how many shots or gun bullets were left in the defendant's gun?
I believe there were 2 when it was all said and done.
Okay. And where did you learn that from?
From Lance Martini through Dr. Ron Martinelli.
Okay, and when would that have been?
That would have been within the last couple of weeks, I think.
Okay, so only recently, correct?
Yes,
All right, and that was within the last couple of weeks?
I believe so.
Okay. And did you ask him or did he tell you?
I believe I asked.
Okay, and why did it become of interest to you?
Because of the numbers, and please bear with me while I try to dig out the cobwebs here. But if the middle shot was part of the shooter shooting the last 15, now we've got 6, and if you've got a magazine that holds, and I don't have that on the top of my head, whatever his did, then does that fit? Or are we barking up the wrong tree? And the answer was yes, it does fit with the 2 that were left in his gun at the end.
So the 15 of 18 matches with the 2 that are left in the gun, correct?
And the middle one, the math worked.
The math worked. Okay. Were the 2 and the middle as well?
Yes.
I want to take the time on the,
Right.
as you say, the cobweb.
Right.
Let's make sure of your testimony. You thought that the Glock 17 had hold 16, correct?
To the best of my recollection.
Yeah.
And honestly, I'm telling you all that I recall.
Okay.
And I think that that Lance Martini would be the person to ask about the specifics because he responded with the math.
Understood. So you wanted that information, so you spoke to Mr. Martinelli within the past 2 weeks, and he spoke to Mr. Martini again and got back to you with the information.
Correct.
This is a phone conversation that you've had only within the past 2 weeks.
I believe
I'm
so.
going to give you the appropriate time to walk through
Right.
this, but it was important to you because you wanted to know how many shots were, correct?
I believe
Whether
so.
it's consistent with what it was that you found,
Right.
correct?
And his response was, yes, it is.
Okay. Yes, what is consistent with what?
Yes.
Overall.
Yes, the middle shot being the same shooter and the same series as the 15 in the last shot is consistent with the math of how many rounds were left and how many rounds Officer Brelo's gun held.
Okay, so 15 plus 1, 16.
16.
Correct?
Correct.
I think you put in your report somewhere. Could you draw my attention to it where you've had been in law enforcement for 41 years, I think.
Well, criminal justice system.
Okay, all together.
Right.
Right. So
Yes.
I think maybe I should go up closer to the top. And I think that you list in there your 41 years.
It's in my CV.
In the CV. Okay. So in there, it's some years as a police officer in 2 different cities, correct?
Correct.
And then captain at
Pacific Union College.
Is that a
At
junior
Pacific
college?
No, it's a 4-year liberal arts school.
Okay, so captain there before going into the forensic field, correct?
Before going into the investigations field and then from there into the forensic field.
And you have a CCW license in
33 states.
3 states?
33, I believe.
So you shoot guns.
I do shoot guns.
Okay. And I think you had some testimony or something, and also in your report here about the reloading time, that could be done within 2.6 seconds.
Yes.
Okay. So the review of fact pattern, I know you were going through Mr. Martinelli and Mr. Martini, but in your review of the facts, of the documents that you said on direct that you reviewed,
Yes.
did you ever review the defendant's statement? I think you made mention of it in your report.
Yes, I did early on.
Okay. And as to these shots that you think are separate gunshots in
Right.
of the 15 shots, are you aware that the defendant never said in the statement that he heard those?
I don't recall.
Are you aware that the defendant, as part of the statement, says he doesn't remember part of what happened that
Yeah,
night?
that I do remember.
Okay. Was it important to you in your analysis at any point in time, and did you speak to Mr. Martinelli or Mr. Martini about whether or not the defendant had heard those 3 shots between the 1 and 18?
My recollection was the defendant did not remember a lot. His memory had quite a lapse during the shooting time.
I want to take it back to your conclusions then.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about the different things that you're saying on a basis of a reasonable degree of scientific certainty. And right above it, we're talking about your analysis on that middle gunshot, correct?
Yes.
Okay. And can you read those last 2 sentences for us?
The middle gunshot is not identical to the other gunshots in the series, but there are similarities. Based on my analysis, it is plausible this may be a shot fired by the same weapon as the 15 gunshots in the second series. Any difference would be expected if the shooter was in transition, moving from one point to another.
Okay. So I think there's 10 decibels lower or higher on that middle shot. Do you recall that?
Yeah, no, it's not 10 decibels.
Well, what is it? You recall there's a difference?
Very well. Let's see. Yeah, the middle shot is minus 10.45 dBs. The first shot is minus 9.15. The next one is minus 10.11.
So what is the decibel difference between the middle shot and the first shot of the second series?
It is just a little over 1 decibel.
One?
Let's see. Yeah, 10.1.
So 10. I said
Yeah.
10.
Oh, no, 1.
1.
Because the first shot is 9.15 decibels.
Okay, so it's a decibel. Now,
Right.
is that what you're talking about here, when it expected if the shooter was in transition, moving from one point to the other?
Well, if you look at the rest of the chart, and trying to be thorough here, the other 15 are not exactly the same decibel level.
Right.
There's variation in those 15, and yet we all agree and that they are the same shooter.
Absolutely. So any difference would be expected if the shooter was in transition, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Would that be between the middle shot and the first shot of the last series?
It could be.
Okay. How about between shot 12 and 15? Do you see a difference there where somebody might be transitioning and moving?
Well, what I see is the cadence of that slowed down. It's still got the rhythmic effect to it, but it slowed down considerably before the last shot.
Besides cadence,
Right.
does anything on a spectrographic analysis or waveform analysis show us that between 12 and 15 that there is a transitioning as well?
I would have to look at that again.
Okay. Is that something that you can look at if I put it up on the screen?
Let's take a look.
You want to direct me to the one that makes best sense for you?
Keep going. Let me find it for you. It would be Exhibit 4.
But you didn't look at transitioning?
No, actually, when you look at the spectrograph, the last shots have the same similarities as the known the first 4 do. If you look down between 100 and 200, that's very similar, and the 250 range, and then 800 to 600, also very similar. But there's similarities through all of those known shots.
And the known shots, just so we're clear and we're exact, the 15 of the 18 of the
Yes, correct.
right? Okay. So the transitioning that you're speaking about, that would be between the shot before the series and this series, then, correct?
Well, I'm saying that would be a factor that could affect the amplitude of that shot.
And it would be expected, correct?
If transition is happening?
Yes.
Certainly.
Okay. So it's consistent with someone transitioning or moving, is that correct?
A change in amplitude could certainly be consistent.
Again, we're getting back to the one gun, one location, one direction, correct?
Yes.
So when you say transition, we're talking about transition or change in location?
Moving.
Moving. And that would be location, correct?
Correct.
Okay. In your review of Mr. Brelo's statement as it relates to your audio analysis, I take it that reviewing his statement as far as his locations and his different directionality of shots was of interest to you while you were doing your analysis, correct?
And that's correct. That's why I reviewed his statement.
So you're familiar that that he was made mention or a statement to the effect of transitioning to the driver and the passenger during his firing? Do you recall that, sir?
I don't recall that.
Okay. Is that something that you might have remembered earlier or reviewed earlier?
It's possible.
Okay. Did you speak to anybody about that, or did anybody ask you questions about that directionality?
No.
How about statements or police reports about ceasing fire? Did you review any of that stuff? That somebody called out to cease fire? Did that ever come to your attention?
I don't recall that.
Might that have been something that you reviewed before but just don't recall? Or is that
It's
something?
possible that I have no recollection if I reviewed that I came across it.
All right. And you haven't reviewed any transcripts during the course of the trial? You don't know about witnesses' testimony, do you?
I have not reviewed transcripts. I've reviewed many reports.
Okay. One moment.
Sure.
Mr. Stutzman, we were talking a little bit about directionality. What is shielding?
Shielding is where there's something between the gun that's being shot and the recording device that shoots it, that records it. And if there's some obstacles, something that between them, then that will baffle and dampen the record of the gunshot to some extent. Depends on what the object is.
Sure. And the object could be something that's between where the recording is?
Yes.
Where, in this case, the Brelo police cruiser, correct?
Right.
And the actual gun itself and the target, right?
Correct.
Something in between the two.
Right.
Okay. And you've been involved in other cases where directionality and shielding has been important. Is that correct?
Certainly, yes. Yes.
Okay. Testified in other matters as well?
I've testified in other matters. I've testified about directionality.
Okay.
I don't know that shielding has been specifically part of that.
Right. And you're aware, because you were at the scene, was it pointed out to you where the Brelo cruiser was?
Yes.
Okay.
Approximately back past the driveway.
Okay. And you see the model here where it's back past the driveway. And was it brought to your attention that the cruiser was essentially right in front of where this is? Correct, sir? Not off to the side, but in line with, if you will?
Yes, correct.
You saw that?
Well, I saw the scene. No, they didn't have the cruiser at the scene.
Okay. Did you see the road itself? Where
Yeah.
the cruiser was?
Yes.
Okay. It was outside this scene on a road. I'll make mention of it too in case it was mentioned to you. Lee Road, do you recall that?
I don't recall the name of the road, but I know
There's a
the road.
road over there.
Correct.
And you're aware from the reports that the defendant was in different positions. One of those positions is being argued that he was on the hood, correct?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Are you aware of Officer Sabolik's testimony or statements how the defendant was pointing downward with the gun in front of him, correct, sir? Are you aware of that?
I believe I recall that.
Yes.
From being up higher.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes, being up higher. And the
Correct.
gun being between his body and the microphone that you saw.
Yes,
Correct, sir?
Correct.
Nothing further on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Do you have any redirect, Mr. Mack?
Mr. Suchman, do you recall the conversation that Mr. Bell had with you regarding whether or not you were published
Yes.
and the millions of articles and publications of Koenig and Maher? Do you recall that?
I remember that.
Who was the first expert in this case to identify the middle gunshot as being similar to the 15 gunshots in the second series?
That was me.
And you're aware that all of their experts agreed with you?
I am.
Are you aware that of the state's 5 experts, none of them tested the first series to see if any of the shots from the first series matched up with the second series?
Yes, I'm aware of that.
Are you aware that Mr. Koenig did not produce one graph through his expert report to identify the source of his methodology?
Yes, he never does.
Do you have an opinion about Mr. Koenig and his abilities as an audio expert?
Objection.
Disabilities.
Well, he opened the door.
Yeah, you overruled.
Yes, I do. Mr. Koenig writes brief reports. They're very cryptic. He never identifies his actual, what he did or the software he uses. He never provides any spectrographs, any waveforms. As one attorney put it, it's the I'm Bruce Koenig and you have my word for it method of presenting.
Did you make any material changes to your report since October of 2014?
The only thing that's different is I corrected those typos. Those
All right.
errors.
And concerning the middle gunshot, that time was already identified correctly in the latter part of the report. Is that correct?
It was.
There's been some discussion about your review of other information, other material in the report. Do you recall that?
Yes.
What Officer Brelo remembered or he didn't remember, or what Sabolik saw or didn't see, was that relevant to your analysis in this case regarding gunshots in the first, middle, and second series?
What was relevant was the actual scientific material that showed up, on the spectrograph and the waveform. That's what I analyzed.
Okay. The fact that you may have had some curiosity regarding the number of bullets remaining in a particular gun, did that, again, impact your analysis at all?
No.
Any of the conversations that you may have had with the other experts, did that impact your analysis at all?
No.
Is there some conspiracy between you and the other experts to make this right?
Certainly not.
In that second series, even after Mr. Bell's cross-examination, do you still hold the opinion to a degree of scientific certainty that those 3 overlapping sounds are gunshots?
Yes.
Okay. Nothing's changed about
No.
that? Did you hear any language in that segment of the tape where you hear the gunshots recorded? Did you hear any language to the effect of ceasefire?
I did not.
I'm not really.
Thank you, Mr. Mack. You have any recross, Mr. Bell, based on what you've heard since you last inquired?
Yes, sir. So the been criticized by Mr. Koenig, correct?
Correct.
In the past as well?
No.
How about who's Mr. Nakasone from FBI?
He is an audio scientist, formerly with the Los Angeles Sheriff's Department.
He's now with the FBI as well.
Correct.
And Mr. Koenig was there for how many years? 26 years, correct?
I don't know. Many years.
Okay.
He retired.
And Mr. Nakasone has found some criticism of your work before on voice comparisons, correct, sir?
Overruled. But hold on, because I didn't hear those last few words. On police, what?
On audio analysis, audio comparison, voice comparison, correct, sir?
You know, interesting you say that because twice he's been sent to where I was testifying. Once he sat through my testimony, but had very little that he could find fault with it. And once he wasn't even there for my testimony. He came and was not allowed to render an opinion. Simply, I don't know what he testified to.
But the question was, you're aware that he's criticized your technique on audio voice comparison work, correct, sir?
Overruled.
Yes.
To what extent, I don't know. I do know that twice he came out at the request of a prosecutor when I was testifying on defense cases. But any criticism that he had, I was never made aware of it.
You don't know the extent to the criticism.
I don't, and I think I probably would have if it was significant.
Do you ever review any of the appellate opinions on any of your testimonies, sir?
No, I was not where there were any.
And so you're unaware of
Any opinions of what?
Mr. Nakasone.
Oh, yes, no, I have not.
And so you're not aware of those.
Correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. Sir, appreciate you coming down and
Certainly.
testifying. You're certainly excused at this point.
I'll wait and get my equipment when we get ready.
Yeah, we'll break in probably 10 minutes or so.
Okay, thank you.
Does the defendant have another witness, Mr. Shaughnessy?
We do. Dr. Paul Michael Graham, Judge.
Please come up this way if you would. Stop there and raise your right hand. Do you solemnly swear you will testify the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? All right. Watch those cords, and if you could come up this way, please. And be careful of all that on the ground, and please have a seat here. And please speak in the microphone. So before we begin, I want you to know we're going to get through 10 minutes or so of your testimony and then take a lunch break. So be prepared to testify in the afternoon as well. Thank you, Mr. Shaughnessy.
Thank you very much, Your Honor. Doctor, could you please state your full name and spell your last name for the record?
My name is Paul Michael, M-I-C-H-E-L.
Okay, sir. Doctor, I'd like to ask you about your educational background. Could you tell me what degrees you hold?
I hold a degree Doctor of Optometry from the Southern California College of Optometry. I hold a Bachelor of Science in Human Vision from the same institution. I have my pre-med degree was a Bachelor in psychology with the emphasis in perceptual and physiological psychology from California State University at Long Beach.
Could you explain what perceptual psychology means?
Perceptual psychology is the integration of our perceptions related to our conscious existence, meaning that from the sensory organs such as the eyes, ears, etc., and integration into the brain that creates our conscious awareness.
Sir, do you have any prior law enforcement experience?
Yes, I, for 7 years, was a sworn reserve police officer, City of Huntington Beach, California, and for 7 years I had been a technical reserve police officer, Los Angeles Police Department, officer involved shooting investigations unit.
Sir, what training or education did you receive in order to be a police officer at Huntington Beach, California for 7 years?
I went through the California Police Officer Standard and Training Approved Academy and field supervision and eventual graduation for what's called a Class 1 Reserve.
And could you explain for the court, what does a Class 1 Reserve mean?
He's a part-time police officer in a marked police car responding to calls and general police activities.
Okay. And for those years as a Class 1 Reserve police officer, what were your duties, or could you briefly describe your experience?
I worked primarily in patrol. I also was full-time assigned to detention in the city jail, and I also worked undercover in the special enforcement detail.
Did that entail being a uniformed police officer in a marked zone car?
Yes.
You indicated that you had police experience at the Los Angeles Police Department?
Yes, I did.
And that was in the officer-involved shooting unit?
Yes, it was.
And could you tell the court what your duties and responsibilities within that unit were?
I was, as needed, a technical advisor on issues related to vision in crime scene investigations and also officer-involved shooting investigations as it relates to weapons identification. And
have you been retained as an expert in the field of optometry and vision sciences in the past?
Yes, I have.
And approximately how many times have you been retained as an expert in the field of optometry and vision sciences?
44 times.
And of those 44 times, have you been retained by police officers in the past?
10 times.
And the other 34 you were retained by?
People who had been charged by police agencies with crimes and misconduct.
Have you been retained by anybody who is currently a death row inmate?
For 15 years, I have been involved in the appeals process for a man by the name of Kenneth Gay, who murdered a Los Angeles police officer. And in my investigation, I learned that one of the 5 eyewitnesses who said they saw the murder, this person could not have actually seen what they have testified to have seen. So it's invalid identification and witness testimony.
Is Mr. Gay an African American?
Yes, he is.
Was the police officer Caucasian?
Yes, he was.
You continue to be involved in that case?
Yes.
Have you been published, sir?
Yes, sir.
And what publications have you been published in?
I've been published by the Federal Bureau of Investigation in weapons identification and visual perception problems in low lighting of lighting. I've been published in Law and Order magazine, and I've been published in the Champion, which is the Journal of the Criminal Defense Attorneys.
Were you retained, or did you participate in what we might know as the Ruby Ridge case?
Yes, I was.
And who retained you in the Ruby Ridge case, sir?
The Federal Bureau of Investigation for Special Agent Lon Horiuchi, who was the officer in question. Horiuchi, H-O-R-U-G-H-I.
Sir, have you lectured in the past in the field of optometry and vision science?
Yes, I have.
Okay. And just briefly, could you describe how often or how frequently?
In the year 2000, I was retained by Smith & Wesson Police Academy to travel across the country and give lectures before law enforcement agencies on vision as it relates to investigation of police officer involved shooting and threat identification. I have lectured here at Lake County before the local bar association, and I can recall lecturing before the San Diego County Homicide Investigators Association.
Sir, have you been previously qualified to testify as an expert witness in the field of optometry and vision sciences?
Yes, I have.
And how many times, sir?
I've approximately 25 times that I've appeared in court.
Would that be in state court or federal court?
Both.
Sir, how did you become involved in this case?
I was contacted by Mr. D'Angelo in the fall when I gave a lecture in Lake County, Ohio.
Sir, did you review any materials in this matter?
Yes, I have.
And what did you review, sir?
I specifically, the report that was written by Mr. Baina, dated January 7th. I have read a report by Paradigm Forensic Services of California, dated January 3rd. I've read Ohio Bureau of Criminal Identification and Investigation narrative, dated November 30th. I've read December 10th of 2012 Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations reconstruction written by Special Agent Daniel Winterich. December 6, 2012 Ohio Bureau of Investigation and Identification report written by Special Agent Daniel Winterich. January 4th, the Glen Oaks Pathology Medical Group report. The December 13th, 2014 audio analysis report by Mr. Stretcham. November 29th, 2012, Cleveland Police Chief's timeline that was written on November 29th and created by A.C. Thomas. Should I go on to complete the list? Or?
You provided a list of all the things that you reviewed?
Yes.
That included a statement of Ohio Attorney General Mike DeWine,
Yes.
Bracknell Police Department dash video, correct?
Yes.
Cleveland Police Unit dash video,
Yes.
and Ohio State Highway Patrol dash video,
Yes.
November 20th, 2012 dash video, view of activated lights and strobes,
Yes.
November 29th, Bracknell Police Department dash video,
Yes.
Cleveland Police scene photos,
Yes.
Photosphere CV,
Yes.
photographs from the Bureau of Criminal Investigation
Yes.
of the police units in the
Yes.
suspect vehicles,
Mm-hmm.
photographs of the Chevy Malibu in the impound garage,
Yes.
photographs of Unit 217 in the impound garage,
Yes.
photographs of Unit 238 in the impound garage.
Yes.
Okay. As part of reviewing all of these materials, did you review the statement of Officer Brelo?
Yes, I did.
As a result of reviewing all these materials, did you generate a report?
Yes, I did.
May I approach the witness, please?
Sure.
Showing you what has been marked as Defendant's Exhibit V. Would you take a look at that, doctor, review it, and tell me what it is?
This is my final report after having reviewed the materials pertaining to the shots fired in question by Officer Brelo.
I don't know. And is that pretty much the prefatory stuff?
Just about. Probably be a good. From here, I'm going to go into the reports.
Okay. So, sir, as I said, we're going to take a break for lunch at this point. You remain under oath and obligated to return to the stand at 1:15, if you would. And we're off the record. Thank you. See you in a little bit.
1:15 now.
Thank you. Lloyd and Nunez.
That was the other. That was Brelo.
Cafeteria.